Purdue deserves to be ranked number 1 today.
You are Locked On Boilermakers, your daily podcast on the Purdue Boilermakers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Boilermakers here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I am your host. I am Nick Arvin. Going into this beautiful Monday, today is a big day because today the preseason AP poll comes out. And let me tell you, Purdue deserves to be number 1 in that. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about KenPom that came out over the weekend. And we'll talk about that Minnesota versus Purdue game that just went terribly down the stretch for the Boilermakers. Today's episode is brought to you guys by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. So, like I said, AP poll comes out today. That preseason AP, and Purdue absolutely deserves to be ranked number 1 in that, in my opinion. And I'll make the case for the Boilermakers, but first, some people say, hey, preseason AP, it doesn't really matter. And I honestly held that sentiment for quite a while because it's like these AP voters, a lot of them, especially on the football side of things, aren't necessarily the most educated when it comes to the landscape of college basketball. A lot of these people are beat writers for one specific team, so they don't really cover every team. They don't understand how good every team is. That's something that we've seen in college football. Don't necessarily know how prevalent of a problem that is in college basketball, but the AP voting, it's not always accurate. That's just how it is. But that doesn't mean that the preseason AP poll isn't important because it's going to set the baseline for where these teams go, where these teams are going to be ranked going down the stretch of these first few games of the year, especially going into non-conference play. Because if you think about it, say Purdue's ranked number 1, you have a margin of error to lose some games. Whereas, say a team comes in at 23, 22, 21, if they lose the same amount of games as a team that's ranked in that top 5, they're going to get booted out, whereas that team in the top 5 are going to stay just because that's how preseason AP rankings work. That's how the top 25 works. And for this year, thankfully, Purdue, they will have a great ranking at the start of the year. Whether that's number 1, we'll have to find out this afternoon when this video is being recorded. But right now, it comes down to 3 teams, in my opinion. This should absolutely be the top 3. It's Florida, Houston, and of course, Purdue. Purdue should be number 1, but I think that you can put in Florida or Houston. I love Houston this year at number 2. I think Florida at 3. That's good. You bring in the 2 teams that were in the national championship last year. You bring in the team that brings back the most production, that has 2 potential All-Americans, and you can see a top 3 really starting to shape. You can look at a team like UConn, and I don't think that they deserve it quite yet, quite frankly. I think that UConn's good. They won back-to-back national championships a couple of years back, but last year, they weren't good. They made it to the tournament, didn't find any success. I don't think that they should be bumped up all the way to the top quite yet. Kentucky will be good. St. John's will be good. Those are teams that will be up towards the top. But like I said, it really comes down to 3 teams: Houston, Florida, and Purdue for that coveted number 1 spot. And like I said, I believe it's Purdue. And let me make the case real quick, because I think that Purdue is the number 1 team in the nation because they do return guys. They returned a Trey Carpenter in, who was all Big Ten last year, looking to be an All-American, who, say what you want, but I believe in my whole heart that he is the best power forward in the nation. I think that we're going to be able to see that. And to add to that, Purdue, they have an upgraded front court this year behind Oscar Clough, behind Daniel Jacobson. Those guys are Jacobson, he's healthy this year. Clough gets brought in. Those are additions that make this team better. I think that when you look at Purdue through an offseason lens, yeah, maybe they didn't bring in as many guys or as high-ranking guys as other programs, but as a lot of people say, we don't rank stars in college basketball. We rank guys, or we recruit guys rather, that are going to fit into our system. And that's something that Matt Painter did so well this year with the additions of Liam Murphy and the addition of Oscar Clough this year. perfect fits for what this roster needs. And I think that's what Purdue did better than anybody this offseason, addressing the needs of this team. We saw last year, and we'll talk about this in terms of KenPom, how that may have not adjusted, but Oscar Clough, he gets brought in to fix that rebounding problem. Daniel Jacobson, he goes down early in the year. So you're going to have a hole at that center spot. And that did happen. That's kind of what cost Purdue against Houston. That's what cost Purdue down the stretch at times. The lack of size, the lack of ability to rebound or play defense on the interior. And this year, you return Daniel Jacobson, who's healthy. Hopefully, he's able to stay that way. And then Oscar Clough, who is the best rebounder in this transfer portal. The additions that make this team better, that fill in the exact spots where Purdue needed to be filled in. That's why this team is number one. You can talk about Braden Smith all day long, the best point guard in the nation. That guy has the opportunity to break records that haven't been broken in decades. He has the opportunity to do things from that point guard position that haven't been done in forever. That man is he's special. He's in a category of his own. So everybody knows about Braden Smith, but it's the depth pieces around Purdue that makes this a number one team, that makes this team so attractive to the voters of the AP poll, because you can have an All-American. You can have a National Player of the Year candidate. You can even have two National Player of the Year candidates, although it's rare. But you can't win a game if you don't have five guys on the court at a time that are competent, that are winning basketball players. You're only as strong as your weakest link. And for Purdue this year, there's not many of them. They have about 10 to 12 guys this year. We can go down the list, but real depth pieces like CJ Cox, Jakari Harris, Jack Benner. There's just so many different pieces from a depth perspective for this Purdue team this year that I know we're preseason number one, but I think that that's something that's going to be able to bring Purdue way past the preseason, way past non-conference and into conference play in the Big Ten, into 2026. And then going into March, that depth carries into the tournament. That depth travels into the tournament. We saw in previous years. That's something for Purdue that they not necessarily struggled with, but there were times where things didn't go your way and you were put in an opportunity, or you were put in a situation where that depth would have been very handy. And for Purdue this year, they absolutely have that depth. So Purdue, they deserve to be the AP number one. We'll find out today, but it is important because it's going to determine where this team is going into non-conference, how the media sees this team, how the voters see this team, and it's going to kind of establish the baseline for where this team is. If they do pick up a non-conference loss against one of those tough teams, I don't see Purdue dropping too far. They're still going to stay in that top 5, top 10 range because you start out number one. You already have the respect of that poll, the respect of those voters. And whether it's done the right way, that's up for debate. Obviously, the AP format, it's not the best, or I guess it's kind of hard to say whether it's the best format or not because there really isn't an alternative format. Obviously, there are errors in the AP format. There are errors with who votes, when they vote, who they vote for. That's just natural, but it is important. It is important. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive, where it can be flawed, but it still is important, of course. So I would love to see Purdue get ranked in at the number one spot for the AP poll preseason. And then going into Kentucky, what a fun exhibition matchup that one's going to be in just about 11 days. We're getting super close, under 2 weeks. I can feel it. But going into Kentucky, and Kentucky, probably a top 10 ranked team. Purdue, you get that number one, all the better. Number one, top 10 team exhibition match. That one's going to be huge. And then we talk non-conference games. Matt Painter says that he kind of makes that non-conference based off how he wants to play in March. You face off against Evansville, Oakland, teams that you're going to play early on. And then you kind of go into tougher games like Marquette, Iowa State. It's going to be on display this year. That non-conference is going to be tough. And if Purdue has that number one by their name, I think it makes it all the more exciting. Some people say it's a target on their back. I think it's a standard to live up to. I want Purdue to get that number one, and they definitely deserve it. We'll talk about another ranking system. That's KenPom. That gets tossed around all the time. It was something interesting that came out over the weekend. We'll talk about maybe Purdue's defense is being underrated. Stick with us. We're talking here next. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than just put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. For Purdue this year, that guy is going to be Braden Smith. He's a dog. He's got to push forward and continue to be who he is. As the point guard of this team, he's a leader, and he's going to continue to push this team forward, much like Mazda. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. We talked in the last segment about that AP poll that's coming out today, but over the weekend, KenPom, the preseason KenPom poll, it came out, and that's a rating system that, once again, it is important because in college basketball, all these different rating systems, all these different evaluations of teams, they're pivotal because the March Madness pool, the seeding, the who gets in, who gets out, it's decided by people who have to look over these stats. So obviously they're going to play some type of role because there is the margin of error for, hey, we have humans deciding who's going to be in, who's going to be out. And a lot of that does come down to the numbers. So you got to look at these. And there's some stat. I think it's no team in March has won since like 2000, unless they were ranked top 30 defense, top 30 offense in KenPom. So we know that KenPom is definitely important to evaluating how good a team is, whether it's accurate from a preseason perspective when we haven't seen these teams on the floor. We'll have to see, because I believe that KenPom absolutely disrespected Purdue in terms of where their defense is. To be expected, their offensive rating was the best in the nation at 95 or 124.5 rather. The next closest that I can see is Florida at 121.3. And then, of course, Houston, they come in at number 1 on the KenPom system. Florida comes in at number 2, and Purdue comes in at number 3. So those are kind of the three teams that I talked about for the AP poll. But I feel like Purdue, they are disrespected. So the way that this is kind of figured out is you have an offensive rating for both these teams, and then a defensive rating, and then the offensive rating subtracted by the defensive rating, and of course that gives you your net rating. So Houston, they have the best net rating, and that's because they have the number 1 defense in KenPom. They have the number 10 offense, the number 1 defense, and that gives them the best overall net rating. So Houston comes in at number 1, and that's something that I do expect to see. I think Houston will have an amazing defense. Purdue, they saw that in the Sweet 16 last year. I think that team's going to be just as good this year under Kelvin Sampson. Not a lot lacking for Houston this year. They have a pretty complete roster. To be honest with you, they return Miles Uzon, Emmanuel Sharp. They bring in Isaiah Harwell, the freshman. Just a lot of good pieces for that Houston team this year. I'm not expecting them to take a year off, nor am I expecting Florida to take a year off, because under Todd Golden, that's one of the upcoming teams in the nation right now, one of the upcoming programs. They proved it last year. Boogie Flan, they bring in from Arkansas. They bring in a couple transfers. They return Alex Condon. That's going to be a good team this year, but they're ranked higher than Purdue because KenPom, they give Purdue the 29th rating defense. Florida, they have number 6 and the number 3 offense. Purdue, they have the number 1 offense and the number 29 defense. And I honestly think that that's a wildly disrespectful for what Purdue's going to be this year, because I think that Purdue is going to be an underrated defensive squad. I think that they can really establish themselves as one of the premier defensive teams in the nation this year, which is insane when you factor in that Purdue also has the number 1 offense. But that's just kind of what you get when you have the front court depth that Purdue has. We talked about it in our last segment, but getting Daniel Jacobson healthy again is going to be so huge for what Purdue wants to be, because it kind of gives you an advantage where you can clog him up in the paint and he can rim protect. He's not as good of a rebounder as Oscar Clough, but that's kind of what you got. You can rotate the 2 guys in. Oscar Clough, he can rebound the ball at an elite level. Daniel Jacobson, shot blocker at an elite level at 7'4". So when we look at this KenPom rating at 29, I feel like a lot of that is kind of factoring in where Purdue was last year. And that's not necessarily wrong, because Purdue, they weren't the best defensive team last year. You could point to some of the rebounding issues, a lot of scarcity in the front court. That's completely fair if you want to base it off last year, but this is supposed to be rated off this year. So I don't understand how you can look at all those pieces. You can look at a Jakari Harris and a CJ Cox, who they're going to plug in that backcourt. And then talk about it from a guard position. Those are two of the best point of attack defenders, pushing guys off the perimeter in all of college basketball. You have two guys at the guard position to surround Braden Smith, who, of course, everyone knows about him. Everybody knows Omir Meyer, who's a freshman coming in. You have that defensive help from a guard position. You have that defensive kind of depth from your front court and Jacobson and Clough. You have so many pieces. So I don't really understand why Purdue is being seen as a team that not necessarily struggle defense, because 29 in the country, that's still good, but not where you want to be, not where the expectation should be. And when it brings Purdue down to number 3, obviously not where you want to be, because everyone knows that this offense for Purdue, it's going to be the number 1 offense in the nation. There's no doubt about it. But you got to have a solid defense to make it go in March, to find success in March. You have to play defense. So I honestly think that that's something that Matt Painter, he's focused on, and it's something that he's wanted to focus on more than the offense, because he knows that his team's got it figured out in offense. He knows that TKR and Braden Smith are going to be able to get it done offensively. What he wants to figure out is all these depth pieces. If all these depth pieces can come together, if they can play together, and if they can play good defense, because that's really what Purdue is going to need this year. That's going to be what wins Purdue games down the stretch. The ability to get stops late and get the ball back in the hands of Braden Smith offensively. That's the key to winning games. So KenPom, they obviously don't respect where Purdue's defense is at this point. I think that they should. I think that when you look at the transfer portal additions, when you look at where this team is focused, absolutely Purdue should be higher ranked defensively. But once again, it is a formula. There is human error there. I don't know entirely where the math comes from, how the offense and defense is rated, especially when these teams haven't taken the court yet. However, there is some validity to it. Makes sense that Houston, Florida, and Purdue are the top 3. I'll go over just the top 10 here, but Kentucky, they come in at number 4, and they have the number 8 offensive rating and the number 4 defensive rating. So that'll be interesting for that exhibition to see, hey, we know Kentucky, they had an explosive offense, but is that defense here to play this year? We'll see that in that exhibition coming up. Connecticut, we talked about them. I don't know where they'll be. They weren't the best team last year. They weren't the worst. Not living up to the Connecticut standard this year. Bring in some new guys. They have the number 2 preseason offensive ranking. And then Illinois is the 2nd rated Big Ten team in terms of KenPom. That was one that kind of really turned heads. Brad Underwood, who Purdue will face off against in that Illini program, he's kind of been in the news a lot because he talked about European players and international guys, how he'd much rather coach international guys, he said, because they learn it better. They care more, is what Underwood said. And according to KenPom rankings, that strategy has kind of worked out for his guys, because Illinois, they're projected to have the number 6 offense in college basketball and the number 16 defense. So, like I said, Purdue will face off against Illinois in conference play. That's going to be a game that is definitely very exciting. It's going to be one that kind of determines some stuff. I think that Purdue is going to have the opportunity to best Illinois. I think that they have the pieces where they match up really well, especially Braden Smith in that pick and roll with Oscar Clough. I think they can expose Illinois defensively. So we'll get more into that matchup as Purdue Illinois comes up. But just interesting to note that team, they're the 2nd rated in terms of KenPom for the Big Ten, where those Big Ten teams are ranked. But overall, it's just numbers. It's got to get settled on the court, and it's getting so very close. I can't wait for Purdue basketball. That AP poll comes out today, this afternoon, whenever you're watching the show, Monday afternoon, Monday the 13th. That AP poll is coming out. KenPom gives us a good expectation of where these teams will be this year. But for this last segment of the show, I want to go ahead and transition over to football, give my reaction to Minnesota and Purdue. And let me tell you, it's not a good one, because I didn't like what I saw. We'll talk about it here next. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because I can bet however I want. Maybe I want to jump in live on the action or make a parlay, same game parlay. I can absolutely do that. And my favorite, I love to futures bet. Got Purdue, the favorites to win the national championship this year on our partners with FanDuel, and you absolutely can too. So right now, what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Today's episode is also brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one purpose finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. They do the heavy lifting. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I love using Monarch because I was able to cut out all my unused subscriptions. I really saved a lot of money, and I owe it all to Monarch. And don't let that financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. I had Purdue winning on Saturday against Minnesota. I really did. I thought that the Boilermakers, they were prepared for that moment. I thought that they were going to be prepared for Minnesota after Illinois. That defense, it definitely needed work, and I thought they were going to be able to bounce back. I thought that the offense was going to be able to do enough to get a victory, and they absolutely should have done enough. They beat Minnesota in about every single statistical category, and they still found a way to lose this game, and that's kind of what hurts so bad about this loss. I think that this has been the first loss this year that really is kind of stung because I expected Purdue to honestly lose against Notre Dame. I thought they had a solid chance against USC, and they battled in that one, so I wasn't upset. Against Illinois, I was a little upset, but it was kind of to be expected. Against Minnesota, I thought Purdue was going to get that victory. I thought that they had the better team, and for 3 quarters of football, they absolutely did have the better team. When we look at in terms of stats, like I said, Purdue beat Minnesota in about every statistical category. In terms of yards, Purdue beat them 456 yards to 262. That's absolutely unreal. And in terms of rushing yards, 253 to 30. Devin Mockabee had 98 rushing yards compared to Darius Taylor's 32 rushing yards. So my question becomes, why not stick with that? You're up. You have a huge lead, or not a huge, but you have a 7-point lead. You're up. You have the opportunity to extend it to a 2-score lead, and then you throw a pick 6. Why not keep the ball on the ground? Your running backs are producing at an elite level, and then you try to score, and then you put the ball with some trick play. Devin Mockabee, he ends up throwing an interception. It's not on Mockabee. It's on the play calling. You don't need to do tricks every single time. You don't need to get too fancy with it. It's nice when it works, but when you're able to actually find success for the first time this year against a Big Ten team, you're able to find success, really get what you want offensively, and you go away from that. That's not how you win games. And Barry Odom and these Purdue Boilermakers, they found it out because they blew that lead and they lost this game. A lot of that comes down to a Ryan Brown pick 6, but that shouldn't have been it. Purdue still should had an opportunity to win this game, and they didn't make the plays down the stretch that they needed to make to win this game. And it really is a shame. And it hurts. It hurts because this is one where it felt like the turning point. If Purdue could have won this game, the next 2 would have been winnable. And now Purdue, they open up as underdogs to Northwestern, who just beat Penn State over the weekend. Everything changes for the outlook of where Purdue football is right now. And now they're kind of at a point where you may not be that much better than you were last year. You were 1-11 last year, and there's only 2 more winnable games, in my opinion, left on the schedule. And one of those you're an early underdog in going into next week against Northwestern. So I really don't know where this team goes from here, but I was absolutely disappointed in the performance against Minnesota. I thought 3 quarters of football was played brilliantly. I thought that losing in the penalty battle 71-20 in terms of yards down the stretch, I thought that hurts you, and I thought that showed a sign of not being disciplined. And that's something that we saw last year. I didn't really expect us to see that a whole lot from a Barry Odom-led football team, but we sure did. We saw this team play 3 quarters of Barry Odom football and stick to that identity. And then we saw Minnesota outscore Purdue 14-0 in the fourth quarter. We saw Brian Brown throw a pick six. We saw foolish play calling. We saw going away from the only thing that you found success in, and they lost the game because of it. So, I mean, I guess you can say it's a learning experience, but now you've had 4 learning experiences. You're 2-4 on the year, and you got to salvage something from this season, because it's like you want to go into 2026. We knew that in 2025, the first year of Barry Odom, shoot, you may not be the best, but when you see what other programs are doing, when you see what's going on in Bloomington, Curt Cignetti, he's turned that program into the top 3 team in the nation. They beat Oregon on the road, and probably the most impressive win all year nationwide. When you see that going on in Bloomington, and it's like you just can't find success August through October until basketball season starts up in terms of Purdue football, something needs to change, because we need a better product. That's just really what it comes down to. And it feels so close. It feels like you have the pieces, and especially going into the future, I still think that Ryan Brown is the guy going into the future. You have that, but it just needs to be put together, and it hasn't been put together as a complete product yet. And I don't think we're going to see winning football for Purdue until that does get to put together, because they don't have the margin of error. And Barry Odom, he flat out said it after the game. This team isn't good enough to win games when they turn the ball over. The margin of error is not there this year for Purdue. So you can't expect to win games. I don't care who's it against. We saw against USC, Minnesota wasn't any easier. And I don't expect Northwestern to be any easier. You can't win games. You lose the turnover battle almost every game in terms of Big Ten play. You can't do that. You can't win games that way. It's not an expectation that you should have in terms of finding success on the football field. So something needs to change for Purdue. Stick with the run game. You finally get it going. You've been looking to get it going all year. Maybe you find something against Minnesota. You get your senior running back in Devin Mockabee going. Try to turn that into something. I know Ryan Brown, he's been good for you, but it's just like interceptions. They've hurt this team all year long. It's constant interceptions, and it's never interceptions when it doesn't matter. It feels like these interceptions are always in the most crucial moments. And that was something going into the offseason when Malachi Singleton and Ryan Brown, they were fighting for the job. It was really just about the turnovers. Both those guys turned the ball over, and you can attribute that a lot to learning a new system under Barry Odom. And for Malachi Singleton, that's been something that he's still trying to get together. And we saw him go in, and he made several big plays early, especially on his feet. Whether that's something we see, a 2-quarterback look, I don't know. But the thing is, the IQ of this team, not even the IQ, just making the right plays, not turning the ball over. That's the biggest thing. The interceptions hurt you so bad consistently. They always hurt you week to week basis. They put you in spots where you can't win games. You had this game locked up against Minnesota if you just ran the ball throughout the fourth quarter. Yet you throw a pick six, and then the game gets flipped on its head. We saw it against USC. We saw it against Minnesota. And once again, Purdue loses a game that really would have changed the outcome of the season and really would have changed the outcome of the Barry Odom start to the Barry Odom era. Those are 2 wins that Minnesota, not as much as where we saw going into USC, but that would have been a statement win. Both of those wins would have been statement wins. And the pick six, it comes back to bite Purdue. Multiple interceptions come back to bite Purdue. Losing the turnover margin comes back to bite Purdue. You can't win football games if you're not playing to the best of your standards. You can't win football games if you're not playing good football. Turning the ball over, penalties, losing by 50 yards down the stretch in the penalty battle. That's not going to win you games. It's not. That's not good football. It's not successful football. When you bring in over 70 guys that have never played together before, it's not a winning brand of football. Barry Odom, I appreciate what you're doing. You got 2 early wins in the season, but so far you're 0-4 in games that matter. I want to see you win one. It starts against Northwestern. This is one that you have to win. Northwestern, they beat Penn State. but anyone can beat Penn State right now. Purdue needs to beat Northwestern on the road, or else this season gets super dangerous in terms of where's the improvement? I don't know. We'll hope that we see some improvement from this game against Minnesota, how that fourth quarter ended, going into Northwestern, because there needs to be changes made and better football needs to be played. But I appreciate everyone tuning in this beautiful Monday morning. Hopefully, Purdue gets ranked number 1 in the AP poll this afternoon. We'll have a reaction episode tomorrow where I'll talk about that first preseason AP poll. Stick with us every single day here on Locked On Podcast Network. Locked On Boilermakers. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment. It helps us out a ton. And as always, boiler up, hammer down.